रूहों में उतरते हैं सदा मुल्हिम हक के अल्लाह से बंदे को मिला देते हैं रोज़े.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And welcome to Ramadan with MTA International, where we are broadcasting every weekday during this month of Ramadan to bring you interesting segments on health, cooking and religious discussion. We start today's show with a recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه فلبث فيهم ألف سنة إلا 50 عاما فأخذهم الطوفان وهم ظالمون.
And we certainly sent Noah to his people, and he dwelt among them 1,000 years, save 50 years. Then the deluge overtook them while they were wrongdoers.
Joining me on today's show, we have Faisal Mahmood Khan Sahib, a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Faisal Sahib, we've just heard the recitation of the Holy Quran mentioning the life of Hazrat Noah alayhi salam. Could you tell us a little bit more about this verse and the life of Hazrat Noah?
Jazakallah Mansoor Sahib. In this verse it is mentioned that Noah alayhi salam lived amongst his people for 1,000 years, save 50 years. Now what does this mean? Hazrat Muslim Radhiyallahu anhu has very briefly in a few lines explained this in Tafsir Kabir, and he states that this does not mean that Noah alayhi salam physically lived a life of 950 years. Rather what this means is that his shariat, his law, that remained established in the world for 950 years. And so this is what that means. And now when we come to the life of Noah alayhi salam, we know that of course he was a prophet of God, and all prophets of God come at a time when the nation is in manifest misguidance, when they're in utter darkness, and when there is evil and vice that has become rampant throughout the land. And the reason that they come is so that they can, bring those people back to the path of God, bring them to righteousness, and reestablish the unity of God. So one thing that we see which is common amongst all prophets is that whenever a prophet does come in any nation, that prophet is often rejected by a majority of the people. There's only a handful of righteous and pious individuals that do accept him, and this is what we see in the life of Noah alayhi salatu wasalam as well. So there's two kinds of prophets. There's a law-bearing prophet and non-law-bearing prophet. Sure. So Noah alayhi salam was a law-bearing prophet. That means that he was a prophet that received a new shariat. When we take a look at the state of the people of that time, we will find that they were a people who were very much into idol worshipping. And they had many, many idols at that time, but there's 5 main idols that they believed in, and that is also mentioned in the Holy Quran in Surah Nuh, which is chapter 71, verse 24. And in that it is mentioned, the names of the idols are mentioned. They are Wad, Suwa, Yaghus, Ya'uq, and Nasr. And they believed that these different idols or these different gods served different purposes and represented different powers. So for example, Wad was made in the shape of a man, and that represented manly power. Suwa was made in the shape of a woman, and that represented female beauty. Yaghus was a god that they believed could rescue them from difficulties and hardships. And Ya'uq was a god that was made in the shape of a horse, and that represented speed. And they believed about this particular god that it would come to their aid fairly quickly whenever to protect them from any harm that may be caused to them by enemies. And lastly, Nasr was made in the shape or in the form of an eagle, and that represented that represented long-lasting life. So this was the state of the people at that time. They were very much into idol worshipping. Now, as any other prophet, Noah alayhi salam came and he tried to he preached his message to the people and tried very much to bring them to the path of righteousness and to establish unity and to bring them towards the worship of God. And that is all mentioned in the Holy Quran. And I'd like to actually present the translation of those verses because it goes to show how, how determined he was to try and bring his people to the right path. And he tried everything in his power to do it. So I'll just present those verses. It's from Surah Nuh, which is chapter 71, verses 6 to 13. God Almighty states, He said, "My Lord, I have called my people night and day, but my calling them has only made them flee from me all the more. And every time I called them that thou mightest forgive them, they put their fingers into their ears and covered up their hearts, and persisted in their iniquity and were disdainfully proud. Then I called them to righteousness openly. Then I preached to them in public and also spoke to them in private. And I said, Seek forgiveness of your Lord, for He is the great forgiver. He will send down rain for you in abundance, and He will strengthen you with wealth and with children, and He will give you gardens, and He will give you rivers." So from these verses, it is very clear that Noah alayhi salam did not leave any stone unturned in trying to bring his people to the right path. But it is very unfortunate that his people, most of them, they did not believe. As a matter of fact, they accused Noah alayhi salam of falsehood, and they ridiculed him. They just couldn't seem to fathom how a person like them, a person who was born among them, who grew up amongst them, how he could become a prophet.
Absolutely. Jazakumullah. Rabbi Sahib, obviously one of the main things that we know about Hazrat Nuh, and one of the things that he's renowned for, is the Noah's Ark, or Kishti Nuh. Could you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes, Jazakallah. So when the people of Noah alayhi salam began to increase in their opposition against Noah alayhi salam, that is when God Almighty then revealed to Noah alayhi salam very blatantly that, your people are not going to believe except for the ones that have already believed. And so you should build an ark. And so under divine guidance, Noah alayhi salam then built an ark with his followers. And he built an ark with wooden planks and with nails. And whenever the people of his nation who did not accept him, whenever they would pass by, they would laugh at him and mock at him. And, out of mockery, they would say to him that, why are you building this ark? What is the need or purpose for it? And what are you going to is this going to float on land? So, but little did they know that their destruction was near. Noah alayhi salatu wasalam lived in an area that was, where there was lots of springs and fountains. So when the command of Allah came, there were dark clouds that appeared in the sky, and then it began to rain profusely, like it rained in torrents. And there was like water that gushed forth from the very depths of the earth. And because of this, it caused a massive flood. And when that happened, it was in that flood that the disbelieving people of Noah alayhi salam were drowned and were destroyed. And it was Noah alayhi salam and his followers who were saved in the ark.
I see. Jazakumullah. Moving on to our next segment, we are looking at the sayings of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon him, the ahadith. Let's take a look at today's hadith.
عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: كلمة الحكمة ضالة المؤمن، فحيثما وجدها فهو أحق بها. Hadrat Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated, I heard the Prophet of Allah, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, the word of wisdom is the lost property of a Muslim, so that wherever he finds it, he should take it, as he is the most entitled to it.
So, Rabbi Sahib, this is a hadith that we have all heard from once we've been growing up. Could you tell us a little bit about this hadith? How is it applicable in our day-to-day lives?
This is a wonderful hadith. It's very short and sweet, and although it is very short, although it's like 5 words long, it's very profound in its meaning, and it's it consists of a lot of wisdom. Holy Prophet ﷺ has said that if a person forsakes his own culture and tradition and tries to adopt the culture and tradition of somebody else, then it will be considered as if he has that he is among those people, the people whom he is trying to imitate. Now we see this in the world today, that there are many people who who want to become like somebody else. For whatever reason, they feel that they're not good enough, or that they feel that there's something in them, that they feel that there's something else that they need in their life. And this is something that fundamentally stems from having an inferiority complex. I mean, you can have an inferiority complex about anything. It could be secular, or it could be religious based. But the Islam and the Holy Prophet ﷺ has taught us through this hadith that we as Muslims should not forsake our Islamic culture, our Islamic traditions, and seek to adopt the traditions of other communities. Because, as I said, this is something that will lead to a form of mental slavery. And that is far worse than secular slavery. Like if there is a slave, of course he is subject to his owner, but he is free of his mind and his heart is free. But a person who is free, physically a free man, but who is mentally a captive, that person loses his freedom of his heart and freedom of his mind. And he his actions are no different to that of a monkey which dances to the tune of others. And that is something that we should try and protect ourselves from. So one thing that we see in the world today is that unfortunately many people have overlooked this instruction, this wise instruction of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And we see that when people move to these Western countries, they get so caught up in wanting to live a life of freedom that they forget their true values. Now, yes, the Western society is a society that gives us a lot of freedom. There's no doubt about that. And we appreciate that. That is a good thing. And even the promised Messiah ﷺ has praised the British government for the freedom that it provides. But we should also be mindful of the fact that there are certain things that are done in this society which are done in the name of society. They are done in the name of freedom, but they actually enslave us more so than anything. For example, and this isn't the case with everyone, but there are some Muslims, like when Muslim men come to these countries, they tend to come under the influence of the Western culture and they begin to lose their beards, for example. Women, when they come here, they begin to lose their hijab or their veil, and some even begin to wear revealing clothes and so on and so forth. And these are all things that are widely done as if in the name of freedom. But this is something that actually mentally enslaves us, and we should try and protect ourselves from that. As I mentioned before, there are good things in this society, and those things should be adopted. And that is also something that we have learned from the Holy Prophet ﷺ. There is a hadith in which he states, "Kalimatul hikmatu dhalatul mu'min, fahaythu wajadaha fahuwa ahaqqu biha," meaning that a wise saying is the lost property of a believer, and wherever he finds it, he is entitled to take it, for it is his property. So this clearly shows that we should adopt any good thing, any good custom or tradition in any society. Now, how can we determine what is something that we should accept? For this, the fundamental thing that we should look at is whether that coincides with our Islamic values or not.
Absolutely.
And if it does, then it should be accepted. I remember back in Jamia, when we moved from Collier's Wood to Hazelmere. As you know, Hazelmere is a predominantly white area. And before we moved, they weren't used to seeing Muslim people in the neighborhood. And all of that obviously changed when we moved there. So I remember that when we would go out to the shops and stuff, we were advised that we should wear our traditional attire, which is shalwar kameez. And the purpose for this was so that when we go out into the public view, people can see us for our distinct identity, and they can recognize us that yes, we are Muslims, but we are not the kind of Muslims that they often see in the media. We are peace-loving Muslims, we are respectful individuals and loving people in society. So, and this also serves as a form of silent tabligh. And now by the grace of Allah, people in that neighborhood, they know us very well. And they recognize or understand the fact that if there's any sect of Islam which is presenting the true teachings of Islam, it is the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat.
So I guess in this way, then the social applications of this hadith are very, very deep in the way that it is being a proponent of what you know and hold to be important and dear to your own culture, but also, of course, to keep in mind that one should adopt the positive elements within other cultures as well. Moving on to our next segment now, we are going to be giving you a bit of an international flavour. As you know already, every day we like to speak to people from around the world in our international Ahmadiyya Muslim community family, as it were, to give a bit more of an understanding as to what is going on around the world. And today we're speaking to Qasid Varaij Sahib, who is a missionary posted to Trinidad and Tobago. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
So, Rabbi Sahib, Qasid, could you tell us a little bit about Trinidad and Tobago? Whereabouts on the map is it, and what is it renowned for?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, this country, Trinidad and Tobago, even when I was first posted here 3-4 years ago, I had no idea where this was located as well. And so, after doing some research, I realized that this is the Caribbean islands, which are located very close to the South America. And countries such as Argentina, Brazil, they are in South America. And Guyana is also part of South America, very close to Guyana actually. This is where you would find Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago, there are actually 2 different islands, and both together make up this country, Trinidad and Tobago. Some people might know this from cricket, the West Indies team, and Brian Lara. So Brian Lara was actually from Trinidad and Tobago. And it's a very small island. Trinidad is actually the bigger island. And I actually Googled this yesterday. It takes about 4 hours and 5 minutes to go from one end to the other. So this is our country. And with the languages, English is the primary language here in Trinidad and Tobago. We have about 1,400,000 people on these 2 islands. And I can mention about religions. I can tell you that Hindus are the predominant religion here, Hinduism, and then after Hinduism we have Christianity, and followed by Islam. But the very unique thing about Trinidadians is that they're very open to religion, and there isn't so much extremism, where you can find a family that has the father being a Muslim, the mother being a Christian, and the children end up being Hindus. And it's funny sometimes to see it this way because it's very different from what we're used to, where you'll see a man who decides to, a Christian man who decides to, marry a Hindu woman, and they both decide to change their religion to Christianity. So and everybody celebrates all the religious celebrations. So everybody's celebrating Christmas together, everybody's celebrating Eid together. So this is, I guess, a little short summary of Trinidad from my experience.
And Rabbi Sahib, could you tell us a little bit about the Jamaat in Trinidad and Tobago? When was it established? Whereabouts is the Jamaat based in Trinidad and Tobago?
So regarding the history of the Jamaat, by the grace of Allah, this is actually a very old Jamaat. And in the early 1950s, by the grace of Allah, the first missionary was sent here. And he is known here as Maulana Sahib. And when he got here, I guess he had to face the sacrifices, being the first Pakistani missionary in a totally brand new country. But with his efforts, by the grace of Allah, many families started to convert to Islam and Ahmadiyyat. And one of the individuals who I would like to mention here is Maulana Hanifiya Sahib. So after accepting Islam, he was the first missionary from Trinidad and Tobago who actually went to Rabwa Jamia to become a missionary. And regarding his sacrifices, I would like to mention that in 1954, when he left for Jamia, he had 3 daughters and his wife was pregnant, and he left them behind to go and receive that education to ensure that the spread of Islam and Ahmadiyyat could be successful in Trinidad and Tobago. Another name that I would like to mention here is Maulana Aslam Qureshi Sahib. He was serving here for quite some time, and unfortunately he was actually martyred here as well. And there was a specific mosque that he was in the works of building, and later on Khalifa Rabi, he named that masjid, because of his shahadat, he named it Masjid Shahada. And one last individual that I would like to mention here is Bashir Orchard Sahib. He also had the privilege to serve in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, regarding the Jamaat here, I would like to also mention that by the grace of Allah, we are located all across the country. Although our Jamaat is not so big, but by the grace of Allah, we have 7 mosques here. And all those mosques, they're all across the country. I can tell you just about the sacrifices of the members of the Jamaat here. I can tell you that there's one member of the Jamaat in the south side where I am currently serving. There was this one missionary, this one person, he said that, Allah, I want to build a mosque for your sake. And so I might not be able to finish that mosque, but if I don't get to finish that mosque, I want my children to finish it. And if they don't get to finish it, then I want their children to finish it. And he's actually a fisherman. And he says that the most prime money that I made ever in my life was when I started building that mosque, and Allah gave me so much money that I was able to finish the entire mosque very quickly. And I also sent some pictures of that mosque so that we can have a look at how beautiful this mosque is. Another small point that I would like to mention, in fact it's a very big point, it is that by the grace of Allah, Trinidad and Tobago was blessed with the presence of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi, rahimahullah, as well. And regarding his, I think it was about 1 week trip, there was so many amazing experiences that certain members had. In fact, one small story that I would like to share is that there was a mother, well, she is a mother now, but when Hazur came here, she complained to Hazur and requested Hazur for prayers, saying that, Hazur, the doctors are telling me that it's difficult for me to have children and maybe I won't have children. And Hazur told her that don't worry, you'll have 2 children. And by the grace of Allah, today she has 2 children. One is in Jamia in Canada, serving as a missionary, or studying to become a missionary, inshallah. And the second one, she is now a practicing doctor by the grace of Allah.
Jazakallah, Rabbi Sahib. And also, just finally, could you briefly tell us a little bit about the what's been going on in Trinidad and Tobago with regards to the pandemic? Of course, the pandemic has affected different countries in different ways, but tell us a little bit about the goings-on in Trinidad and Tobago during this quite trying time.
Okay, so just like everywhere else, in Trinidad and Tobago, the restrictions were loosened and tightened at different times. So when things had opened up a little bit, we had our 36th Jalsa Salana in Trinidad and Tobago. And when things were tightened up, we've had classes online. We've been having regular classes for Lajna, for the Khuddam Ansar on a weekly basis, as Hazur had instructed that we should have daily dars. By the grace of Allah, the members over here are enjoying their daily dars as well. And we've been doing some hamper distributions as well. And one thing that I would like to mention specifically is that Hazur had instructed Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya in Trinidad, specifically, I would say that we should contact each and every single Khadim and try to, ensure that they're all okay. And I think this was such a great idea. When we started doing it at first, we were a little nervous that, there were certain members that we hadn't even reached out to ever before, but by the grace of Allah, every single person, I can say that they all gave a very, very positive response, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, Jazakumullah. That is Qasid Varaj Sahib talking to us as a missionary posted in Trinidad and Tobago, and a beautiful insight there into the things that are going on around the world. Rabbi Sahib, what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be going over to our studios in the US for our cooking segment, and let's see what the kitchens in the US have rustled up today.
Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to be cooking doubles. It's a dish from Trinidad, also very popular in Southern Caribbeans. We're going to start off by introducing the ingredients that go into it. First we have chickpeas, of course the main thing, and in Trinidad they don't call it chickpeas, they call it chana. Then we have the all-purpose flour here, out of which we will make what's called bara. So there'll be some ingredients that will be going into this, and then we have some things over here on the side that we'll make the chutney out of. So we have some habanero peppers, very spicy, and this herb here is called Shadom Beni Bandania. It is a much stronger version of cilantro, and this is called culantro with a C. Then we have onions, we have cucumber, which we will make our chutney out of. We have lemon, we have some garlic. Also, we have some baking soda, some yeast, some brown sugar, and we have ground cumin. Okay, to make the bara, we have about 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to start off by adding a little bit of turmeric in here. So we need less than a teaspoon, a little bit of brown sugar, not too much, and then we're going to take a little bit of yeast right here. We're just going to sprinkle it a little bit on here, not too much, approximately 1 teaspoon. Okay, and then we're going to take a little bit of this oil, just a little bit. Now warm water will activate the yeast. We're just going to pour about 1/3 of a cup, start off small, and then we're going to knead this dough. We're going to start mixing it. Now we're going to add more. We want our dough to be nice and soft. It was extremely sticky, but after we added a little bit more oil to it, it's starting to come together, and it has this nice soft texture. It's not sticking to our hands as much. Press it on top. This is damp paper towel, and we're going to place this on top and let it sit for about 30 minutes. And in the meantime, we're going to jump to making chana. For that, we're going to start off with 1 onion, and we're going to dice it. Next, we're going to take some garlic. And next, we are going to take our habanero pepper. Now be careful, it is a bit spicy. Just 1 should be enough. So our oil is starting to warm up. We're going to take our onions. So as you can see, after we poured the onions into the oil, we have not touched it. It's frying and it's sort of spread out on its own. And we will let it cook for another 3 to 4 minutes on high heat. So now we're going to give it a final stir, and we're going to move to adding our chickpeas directly into these. There we go. So what we are going to do here is let this cook for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to add our spices directly into these chickpeas. So first, we're going to take our baking soda, and we're going to take 1/8 of a teaspoon and just sprinkle it on top. Next, we're going to take our cumin powder. Next, we'll add some salt. Next, we're going to add curry powder here, and we will add some chili flakes. Last but not the least, some whole cumin to give it a good aroma. Here comes the big secret. We're going to pour this boiling water right on top of that, and look at that. That is the baking soda activating and reacting to the boiling water. You will have this nice creamy texture that will start to form. Okay, so we have cooked the chickpeas for about 10 minutes. We did not cover it. We wanted to dry off that water. So here it is. You can see that there's no water remaining in there, and it's starting to slightly stick to the bottom, which is okay. So when we make our bara, it's not runny and it stays where we pour it. All right, so now we are going to make the chutney. So we have 1 whole cucumber, we did 1 whole onion, and now we're going to take some garlic, just a small piece of urban pepper, slice it. And now we come to culantro. We're going to take some fresh lemon and we're going to squeeze. Here we are. This is a chutney that we'll be using for our baras. Here's our dough. It has risen and you can feel it. It's not sticking and it's nice and soft and fluffy. We're just going to make a round ball out of this and then set it on a surface that's oiled a little bit, and we're just going to spread this. About 4 seconds on one side, and same thing. Our bara is ready. We're going to take this and put it on a paper towel right there. All right, and we set them in a plate and we overlap them like this. Next, we take our chana, and if you don't want it too spicy, you just take it from the side and you place it on there. Next, we take the chutney, scoop from the bottom since all the juices are at the bottom. At the end, we're going to sprinkle a little bit more culantro. And at the end, we're going to squeeze the lemon on top, just a few drops. We just simply roll this up like this and grab it and you just bite into it. Well, that was our presentation on how to make doubles, a recipe from Trinidad. Hope you enjoyed it. Jazakumullah ahsanul jaza for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Indeed a delicious recipe there, and I'm sure many people will be benefiting from that at home. What we're going to be doing now is moving on to our book segment. Now, of course, during lockdown and the pandemic, many people have been at home. They've had a lot more time for taking these books off the bookshelf and actually reading them and benefiting from them. Today, we're talking about a book called Garments for Each Other, talking about marital life, and indeed a very in-depth look into this very important subject. Let's have a closer look at this book.
Garments for Each Other. Now, this is a book by Hazrat Qutney al-Khamis, may Allah be his helper, and it's a compilation of his addresses and of his guidance on how to maintain a happy and harmonious married life, considering the principles of Islam as well. There's lots of issues which take place in married life, and Hazur gives guidance on how one can avoid them, and if one is within them, how they can escape. And of course, this is in light of the Quran, the Sunnah, the teachings of Islam, and what the Promised Messiah ﷺ guided us on as well. Hazur talks about an array of subjects. He talks about match finding and how to find a suitable match, the Islamic way. He talks about weddings and rituals, how weddings should happen, what's the Islamic way, and what are some of the things that are innovations or are non-Islamic. Hazur talks about concepts like how to control anger, the importance of controlling anger, being role model for children, covering each other's faults, being honest, respecting each other's families, looking at the good in each other, and the rights of women, so on and so forth. Now, a few quotes from this very beneficial book I would like to read out. Hazur says, "Both sides are responsible for creating grievances and destroying their homes. If people on both sides control their emotions and become righteous at heart, such problems would never arise. The Holy Prophet ﷺ admonished such people that while both of you see flaws in one another, there must also be some qualities that you like in each other as well. If you focus on the good qualities and adopt the habit of sacrifice, then an atmosphere of love, affection and reconciliation can develop between you. Then Hazur says, the Holy Quran uses the word garment, which means a source of cover for your body, as a source of adornment and protection from extreme weather. So it is the responsibility of both the husband and wife to cover up the faults of their mutual relationship. Then Hazur says, empathy between husband and wife considerably promotes mental, spiritual, and educational moral training of the next generation. A man and woman who lay the foundation of a family in fact lay down the foundation of society. They lay the foundation of either making a nation good or bad. Therefore, there is great need to reflect on this aspect. By citing the word taqwa 5 times at the time of nikah, Allah Almighty has drawn our attention to the point that our every action, every word, every practice should not just be for ourselves. So this is extremely important for all those who are looking to get married, and especially those who are already married, and also those who are married and are suffering problems. Hazur gives guidance in this book through the light of the Quran, through the light of the Sunnah, through the light of the writings of the promised Messiah ﷺ, which will be beneficial for all marital relationships.
So of course, from what we've seen just there, Murabi Sahib, there's so many golden principles contained in this book as to how one can achieve almost heaven within the home in their marital life. Of course, there are so many different elements to talk about, but what is one perhaps element that stood out most for you?
Yes, so this is a wonderful book, and it's definitely a must-read for everyone. There's an extract which I have picked out, which I'd like to present before you here. Hazur states in this book that in some cases, the mutual relationship between husband and wives is ruined because of unkind and offensive remarks from both parties. This is strongly disliked by Allah. Allah Almighty urges both husband and wife to fulfill their respective obligations. He says in the Holy Quran, Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahun. They are a garment for you, and you are a garment for them. The Holy Quran uses the word garment, which means a source of cover for your body, as a source of adornment and protection from extreme weather. So it is the responsibility of both the husband and wife to cover up the faults of their mutual relationship. Similarly, when a man or a woman makes a pledge to the contract of marriage, then they must make their utmost effort to tolerate each other. They should cover up the faults and shortcomings of each other and avoid bickering over petty little matters. The attitude and appearance of an Ahmadi married couple should be complementary, and they should be a role model for others. So this is just one of the many golden principles that have been mentioned in this book. And you know, if a person or if a couple were just to act upon this thing alone, it would really help a lot in solving a lot of the domestic issues that people do have in their life. So, yeah.
Jazakumullah Aslam Jaza. Along with working out the ways in which we can better our relationships with other people, there is also, of course, the need to understand and to better one's own state as well. During this pandemic and during the lockdown, we've seen the rise of issues pertaining to mental well-being, mental health, and also the importance that we must be putting on these issues to talk about them and to discuss them, to remove any taboos and to help each other get through these day-to-day issues. On today's show, we understand and we look at the fact of restful sleep. Sleep is something which is very, very important to all people, and of course, something that many people look forward to at the end of the day as well. But at what point do we know that we are getting enough sleep? And how can a lack of sleep negatively impact our health? To help us understand this issue in a bit more depth, we are speaking to Sarah Wasim Saiba, who is a clinical psychologist with the NHS. Assalamu alaikum, Sarah Saiba. In terms of sleep, some people struggle on a day-to-day basis to get to sleep. And in fact, the anxiousness and the anxiety of getting to sleep or getting enough sleep can indeed start a vicious cycle. So what can people do when they find themselves unable to get enough of their 40 winks?
Wa alaikum salam and Sahib, and Jazakallah for having me on. I think the first thing we need to understand is that the amount of sleep we need varies according to our age. Most people think that we need between 7 to 8 hours sleep, and that's generally what most people do have. But our need for sleep can vary between 6 to 10 hours. A newborn baby needs a lot of sleep. You know, they should be sleeping for about 14 to 17 hours. Not all do, of course. As children get older, they may need between 11 to 14 hours. And adolescents often also need to sleep longer because this is a time of growth and development, whilst older adults seem to need less sleep. You know, it's interesting that the Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, the famous Ruth Bader Ginsburg, would only sleep for a few hours and still manage to hold down an extremely important position. So the amount of sleep can vary between people, and that's important to understand. How do we get a good night's rest? Well, the term sleep hygiene has often been used to describe the process of getting good night's sleep. And sleep hygiene is about a process of how we can cue our bodies to get them ready to go to sleep. One of the first things we need to do is to ensure that the sleep environment, i.e. our bedrooms or wherever it is we're sleeping, that is a relaxed place. We need to block out as much light as possible, and blackout blinds and curtains can help with this, or perhaps even wearing an eye mask. It's important that the environment that we're sleeping in is cool and quiet and dark. You don't want something to be overheated. It's really important, if possible, to make sure that there are no computers or phones or other electronic devices such as televisions in our bedrooms. And beds should be clean and uncluttered. Another kind of tip to get a good night's sleep is to make sure that you avoid heavy meals and too many fluids late at night. Avoid drinking caffeine if possible 6 hours before sleeping. And also, it's not just tea and coffee that has caffeine. You know, so do many fizzy drinks that are quite popular with people. And nicotine, interestingly, is also a stimulant. So it's important to try and develop a relaxing bedtime routine to prepare your mind and body to go to sleep. And all of this preparation starts to send messages to your body that it's time to sleep. Once you know how much sleep you need as an individual in order to feel refreshed, the next step is to actually work out what time you need to be in bed. So if you think you need 7 or 8 hours, that works for you. Decide what time then you need to be in bed and get up, and try and make this into a consistent routine. Avoid late nights, and this is especially important for young children and adolescents, and they need to have a regular sleep hygiene program because they often find it hard to self-regulate. And it's important to try and get up at the same time, whether it's a weekday or a weekend, if you have problems sleeping. Children need more sleep, so there should also be a period of winding down before bedtime. Children often like, for example, a warm bath. They like to have a story read to them. And for adults as well, this is really useful. Try not to watch television before sleeping because this is only going to stimulate your mind and make you feel more active. It's important to have a different set of clothes to sleep in because, again, what you're telling your body is it's now time to get ready to go to sleep. Now, if you find that you can't sleep, don't lie there worrying about it. Get out of bed. But don't then watch the television or go on your phone or your computer. But do engage in something that feels quite mentally boring. What you're trying to do, again, in all of this is get your mind to switch off. keep the lights dim, read a book, do something else that's calming in low light, and then try to go to sleep again. As soon as you feel sleepy, go back into bed. And again, if you wake up, then get out of bed and repeat the same routine. If you continue to have problems sleeping, then you might want to shift your sleep times. So you might only go to bed when you feel sleepy, but make sure you get up at the same time every day. Don't oversleep in the mornings. So make these small step-by-step adjustments, and you then try to make your bedtime a bit earlier if you need to by moving your bedtime backwards a bit. I think it's really important that people don't take long naps during the day if they're having sleep problems. But, there's some evidence that short power naps, like 20 minutes and no more, could be beneficial. But sleeping during the day just confuses your internal body clock, and it means you may struggle to sleep at night. And as with a lot of things, regular exercise really helps with sleep at night. So do try and make sure you do regular exercise. But again, perhaps not too close to bedtime.
Of course, in the day-to-day, many people have found pharmaceutical ways and methods of assisting them in getting to sleep, or indeed to alleviate the problems in other elements of their life. In terms of sleeping pills then, when we're looking at the need for this amount of sleep, if someone can't get it, and many people are turning to sleeping pills, can this help? And are there any potential negative ramifications of taking sleeping pills?
It's best to avoid sleeping tablets unless these have been prescribed by a doctor, because they can be addictive. Some people find that natural remedies help, and as long as they're safe, that should be okay. But again, always check with your doctor and avoid internet-based remedies. For people for whom sleep problems are very severe, it is possible to ask your doctor to refer you to a sleep clinic. Now, in a sleep clinic, your sleep pattern is studied in much greater detail. So they will observe you trying to sleep, and here it becomes possible to actually highlight exactly what's causing your sleep problem. And if it's something perhaps more severe than a problem that can be more easily remedied by the suggestions that I have made. Jazakallah.
Jazakumullah Aslam. That was Sarah Wasim Saiba, a clinical psychologist with the NHS, helping us to understand a little bit more about this crucial issue. I'd like to say Jazakallah to Sarah Saiba, Jazakallah of course to Murabbi Sahib, Faisal Mahmood Khan Sahib for helping us to understand a little bit more about the issues that we've discussed today. And of course a heartfelt thank you and Jazakumullah to everyone tuning in at home. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
रूहों में उतरती है सदा मुहिम हक के